Hi, welcome again to Strategy Social. This is our vlogcast for our Acorders social campaign. Today we're sitting down with Terry Musch. He is the first orchestrator that we have had the opportunity to sit down and test our workshop experience with. And this is the exit interview coming out of that. So Terry, welcome. And I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Terry Musch. I live outside Phoenix in a town called Surprise, believe it or not. I've had a many-year executive coaching practice, and I now am focusing. I've got an aerospace background and a nuclear power background, and a number of technical environments has been my background. But in the interim, I've done a lot of career development and organizational development work and everything that goes with that. That's why I'm feeling so good about what we did today. But right now, currently, I'm really focusing on life purpose guidance, work with people to get them in touch with their gifts and how they want to bring that into the world in a very holistic and natural way. And I'm writing a book about all that stuff like that. So I thank you wholeheartedly for having me today. I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. So my most favorite line from the workshop was by Terry, which is the best gift you can give any individual is making sure that they know in your presence what is the essence of their uniqueness, right? So I want Terry to speak a little bit more on that part and how we can help each other out and making sure that how we are convincing our fellow friend or strategist or a strategy buddy that you're unique and you can contribute towards the society, towards your own personal growth and your social growth.
Well, thanks, Neha. Yeah, it's important that people really begin to explore their potential at every level, what their core gifts and talents are. All too often in life, we develop skills based on things that we really don't like, but we adapt and develop a skill around something that either adapts to a job description or what we think we need to do to be compensated. And a skill is only the end product of a potential talent. I mean, people often ask, what do you mean by skill? Well, you may have great hand-eye coordination, but your skill is hitting home runs. So our uniqueness comes from a complete mosaic of our total field of potential, I call it. It's our level of will. Now we know there are at least 144 different types of intelligence out there. So figuring out where your emotional, spiritual, mental, or physical intelligences lie. It's really having an intimate relationship with your gift, your core gift. Mine is about what I call inspirational ideation. And the day that I found it was the most liberating day of my life. And I worked really hard to do that. And your process can get somebody there pretty quick. So it's understanding everything from your level of will and grit and your EQ and all the things that go with that about what makes you uniquely you. And some would say, I've heard in the spiritual world, of it's the blueprint in your own soul and trying to understand that. That's a little woo-woo, but it's true. I mean, when people connect to who they truly are and know they are, they're in a completely different field of effectiveness. It's not about productivity, it's about effectiveness. And so that's what that uniqueness really means. And then consciously how you bundle that around a consciously chosen purpose, which can be agile and situational and can change over time, but you're always choosing how you want. That's how we define purpose, is the focused, energetic expression of your uniqueness and service. In other words, how am I using my uniqueness all the time and evolving that?
Yeah, and when we got to the end of the workshop, we were bringing you through like a sampling of the world construct that we have working in our campaign and the story that Neha and I have coming together. And you got to see how we're laying out this view of the next 10 years and how we're very clearly articulating there's going to be some struggles here. There's going to be some challenges that we all face here. But we can be more and we can do more if we channelize on this effort that we're focusing and talking through in this campaign. We can increase our own awareness. We can do and find our knowledge and purpose work. So I really appreciated hearing some of your own story today, and anything that that the workshop helped you maybe channelize in a different way. Is there an insight that you got out of today's experience that you could share?
Yeah, there was a great insight in that I never felt more profoundly around my story about the hero's journey, and how early on it was very unconscious until it became very conscious in my life. In other words, I was making very unconscious choices that were leading me on that path until I clearly understood Socratically through your process. It helped a lot. I really had never been put on a spot like that. And it really emerged out of that. And I've never felt it at that level, truthfully. And so, yeah, that really emerged for me to say that what's my own personal myth and typology that I've used to carry along who I think I am to ultimately who I know I am, and how that really worked for me. So that was good. And contextually, I don't know if we'll talk about it more, but you did a brilliant job of defining this next decade and what it's going to look like. People really, really need to understand that. This is not about a pandemic or a bad economy. This is about what's going to happen in this decade, of which, as we talked about, there's a golden age coming. And it's everybody watching this is probably in their own way getting prepared to be a part of that. It's really important people understand that. It's not all doom and gloom. We need to be what's called psychonauts, not astronauts. We need to go inside who we are now. That's the journey now. Because I think we've pretty much worn out the buzzwords and the technology. The technology doesn't mean much anymore. It's great, it's efficient, but it's what goes on in the implementation, integration of that technology from the interior of the individual doing it. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
No, that's exactly right. That's why everything we talk about is about the human domain shift, how we're facing these demands to innovate, but the essential recipe to that innovation is the human domain shift. And that's really what we're trying to get at the heart of Acorders.
It's beautiful because, like I said before, if you can answer 3 questions, you're right down Broadway, well between the guardrails, and that is, who am I, why am I here, and how much is enough?
Yeah.
In other words, am I trying to fill? I once said on a radio show, I said, we all run to the mall to buy things we don't need with money we don't have from jobs we hate to fill the holes in our soul. And I said, how's that working for us? And so what you want are self-action, and that's what your process does beautifully. Get people on a self-actualizing path so that the receiving of the technology is organic. It's not, the technology is not leading you, you're leading it. And that's why it becomes value added on that. It's an augmentation to a process that's already working from the inside out.
Yeah.
Neha, did you have something to add there? Or?
Yeah, on the self-actualization, the same phase that we used quite a lot during the workshop. And Terry, you worked with many executives, many different companies, different styles of work you have observed across your career so far. Self-actualization is something, this word we normally relate with personal growth or, kind of personal strategies. The way you mentioned that how we are associating it with profitability, right? How we are using the power of self-actualization in the corporate world, right? So I want you to repeat that particular thought of yours for the wide audience, because I felt that it is a really powerful thought.
It's about moving somebody's knowledge of who they are to a knowing of who they are.
Yeah.
And knowledge is not knowing until it's incorporated. And this is the left to right brain journey we were talking about. Because I often call it whenever, I've been through all the organizational assessments before and given to people and seen everybody kind of roll their eyes when they get the assessment, death by typology, right? And I say, the first thing I want you to do, I call it upper right-hand drawer syndrome. I want you to go back to your office, open up your upper right-hand drawer of your desk and pull out all other 12 assessments you went through that you thought were nonsense. And I want you to ratchet this up into knowledge about you, and then an intuitive knowing about you, and bringing that knowing back to whatever it is you're creating in the organization. So there's a big difference from running around saying I'm an ENTP or I'm an INFJ, or it's row to set. That's what I call death by typology. To a knowing of that is, back to your uniqueness question, it's an owning and a knowing process whereby you're demonstrating that every day through
Yeah.
your own intrinsic, meaning you want to do it, motivation. And you're seeing yourself grow and evolve into who you know you are. And you're seeing that demonstrated proof in the organization. You're seeing that show up, the knowing of who you are, not just about who you've been told you are or take an assessment, but it's proof of concept. You've brought all of that to your work, and it now goes to a whole new dimension because you're using everything in your potential field at that point.
So when we were at the constructing, the world constructing part of our workshop, I really liked what came through when we were talking about the ability for an individual to really drive on purpose work. How your vision of the future unfolds with an entire new shift in our economy to purpose, to a purpose-based economy. So just help us walk that through, for a minute in regards to how you were describing that process of actualization to get to that point.
To get to the individual in a purpose economy, you mean?
Yes, exactly. To get to that purpose economy.
Well, it's unlearning and unconditioning more than anything of getting somebody back to a point of origin about starting all over at their essence level, of going back to say, it's anytime I ever do a talk, I always say, how many of you in the room think I'm the expert? And half the room always obligingly raises their hand. And I said, the only expert in this room is the one inside of you. And I said, the only learning is going to go on between me and you in the space between us. Because what you want to do is get somebody back to a point of origin of getting their ego structure completely out of who they think they are. And I'm not going to get into identity systems and how we develop them. But to get ready for the purpose economy, and this is, again, the beauty of what you're doing here, is to get somebody to come back almost with a beginner's mind and start all over again, about going from knowledge of who you are, knowledge of what you did, all the things that go with that, to knowing who you are and knowing what you do well and want to do and feel purposeful about. Why? Because you're trying to get somebody to take complete ownership, responsibility, and ultimately accountability to their life and their work in a team or in an organization. Because individuals can never be responsible to others until they're accountable to themselves for who they are and what they've consciously chosen to do. So that's what the purpose economy is going to be built on, is built on people who, A, know who they are, know what they're good at doing, know what they want to consciously create, knowing how to find their tribe. These will not be people that need to be controlled. They will be people who need to have an environment where they can evolve. And that's going to be hard for leadership. I mean, that's why one chapter in a book I'm writing is called Requiem for Transformational Leadership, which was invented true story, it was invented 100 years ago. And we've talked about transformational leadership, right? And my feeling is, if you're a company or you're a leader that thinks you need to transform, it's game over. It's too late. It's too late. If you're not that already and evolving beyond that, because I've always said a leader's only job is to expand the capacity of the organization. And what does that look like? It means that you create an environment where all the potential in it can be released to optimize process and optimize profit. And if you're a leader who needs and has a compulsion to control, which is fear-based, and can't create an environment where people can every day actualize around their own potential, it's game over. I mean, you can take your life cycle of your organization and just compress it over time, because you can only terrorize and make people feel fearful for so long, because pretty soon they're going to rebel. And in tomorrow's world, it's going to be the law of 2 feet. I mean, people are going to go where they're invited, and the war for talent's coming again. And you're going to have an organization that doesn't know either how to capture, incorporate, or utilize talent. I mean, we've said this now for what, 25 years, but very few people can do it. Very few leaders can create an environment where people feel that they can completely become who they were designed to be.
My favorite story that you shared in the workshop being was you're coaching with that individual about what their legacy was going to be after they retired, you know, and you really probed them and had them thinking through that, how they would articulate that story in that journey. And that it then had this transformational effect on their behavior and their output. And it just really spoke, and it rang to me regarding like what we're trying to channel here. And I'm curious now, I'd like to ask strategies, right, for doing that. Like, how did you come up with that? Was that just something that just intuitively came to you, or did you have a strategy in mind already on how you would approach people in that organization?
No, see, that was a case in point in my gift. I mean, about 95% of what I ever say, I never know I'm going to say it. So that's my ideation at work. And that's nothing. I mean, you have your gifts now. We all have our gift. That's why we need to own that gift. And it took me forever, because I made the mistake of equating intelligence with ability or knowledge. In fact, some people think, in terms of my intelligence, I'm average or above. I'm very connected to my gift, and that comes across a particular way. So here's my comment about that strategy. What I do know, and I want everybody viewing this video to understand, that we are in the midst right now of human beings changing their relationship to what work is. I mean, this is literally this will be the decade where people begin to realize, I'm not a worker in a job with a job description. I'm now emotional. I am now a unique individual with a purpose, consciously creating what I want to contribute to the human condition. Because I'm changing my relationship to what we used to call work, and I'm reflecting on it every day. Why? Because I'm taking responsibility for it. I'm not this guy that I referred to as a guy who just was retired in place for 40 years. It's the old joke about, well, I've got 40 years experience. Well, is that 40 years of evolving and learning, or 1 year's experience over 40 times? I mean, what is it you have here? And people are going to reflect on what they're consciously creating. They'll be self-referential around it, because I won't talk here about it, but the human brain, we now know through plasticity, will focus and design itself around what you're focused and purposeful about. It's called self-directed neuroplasticity. I like self-referential neuroplasticity. But the point is, your brain becomes what you're focusing on.
Yeah, yeah. And we talk through that too in our workshop as well, when it comes to making that link between your subconsciousness and your self-agency, and how those two things do collide and interact.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So that's the point I was trying to make, is we are literally in front of our eyes changing our relationship to what work really is. It's no longer going to be this laborious thing, and that I'm just going to get to retirement like we talked about. You're going to work your whole life connected to your gifts, creating something you consciously want to bring into the world. Your energy may shift, you may do less of it, or you may do more of it. But the point is, you're not trying to get to this illusory place called my retirement so that I can get out of the rat race, because the only thing that happens is along come bigger rats, like Lily Tomlin would say. But the point is, we're designed to use our gifts our whole life.
Yeah, for me, I had this moment when I started reading about the Ice Age and early humans, their migratory patterns, and just some of the strategies that early humans had to use to simply stay alive, together. And it was really driving home for me that when I say that strategy is at the heart of an essence of being human, that's not just a good news story. That's not just about feeling. That's about power, and that's about what we're able to really achieve together. um, One of the things that has really always been impactful on my way of thinking about people has been about the notion that like we out survived some of our competitors in the human race, based on our ability to build social systems and have a culture, cultural fabric in place with our systems. And I feel like that's also some of the work that's at play here with us.
Oh, very much so. I put it, I won't get into social engineering and adaptation, how you're beyond right about that, because we're social animals and developing survival mechanisms until we get to this place where it's like, well, we survived, what now? That's called self-actualization. But years ago, I invented a training, and one thing I put in there was whiffum, whiffo, whiffu. In other words, it has to go iteratively through the process of what's in it for me, what's in it for us, and what's in it for the one. I now realize we're going through that as a country, and I won't get into anything political, but the point is we are going through, are we a me or a we culture? So, but the point is, to your point, is that people see that A, I'm going to survive, B, I'm going to survive in this group, C, I'm going to survive and bring whatever it is I do well. You're really right about that. A, we're social animals. We always will be. In fact, the whole concept, and you've studied it, about interpersonal neurobiology, Dan Siegel's work, which is fascinating. You know how people's brains literally wire around their connections. You know, it's fascinating how all that works. But yes, to your point, unequivocally.
Neha, before we start wrapping up today, did you have any lingering comments or questions for Terry?
Yeah, I think so. So through the framework of this workshop, Terry, we went through our fables, our origin stories, our futuristic world construct. Do you think this will add value to whoever will be participating in this workshop in future? So how valuable did you personally feel this experience was for you?
Well, I think, great question. Yeah, I think what I got most out of it, it was a process oriented to go inside first and bring that outside. That's what helped me most of all, is I know it was a pattern interrupt for me because I'm not used to that. And so when you went to whatever the driving mythology or story of your life would be, that took me right inside right away. And I knew this would be organic. But what I love is that you went through this iterative process to come to clarity that took me to a place of ownership. But then you overlaid on top of that what the operating theater is going to look like. You know, it's like bringing who you are to what this unfolding structure is going to look like. And that was very, I mean, it was very, because I just got done doing that talk earlier, talk today, that don't think about this as 2020 and 2021. Think about it as a decade. And that's what you guys did right away. That was so helpful, because what it does is it liberates the ability to allow yourself to unfold over time. It's not that you better get this done, because if you don't get this done by then, which has always been a lot of training, you know, if you don't do this, then you're going to be in trouble. Instead, this process took me into a wide open field about the fact that this time frame on this horizon is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. So it liberated me to think about, well, who am I going to be in the unfoldment of that decade? Who do I want to be in that? It's going to be a deeply consequential decade.
I agree with that. Yeah. I'd like to wrap up on that. Well, thank you for your time today, Terry. You've been immensely generous with both of us. Again, you know, I came into knowing you through the Foresight's 2025 Future of Work, where you and two other authors were coming through and making a really strong case about what it would be like for someone like me, who at that moment in time was making my transition from the military into corporate, a corporate commercial career. And it did tool me in a way that it set me to go forth and transform my leadership style and my interpersonal skills and really focus on the human domain. So I just want to thank you again for that, because it's shaped my career over the last 5 years.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Neha, do you have any final comments?
Yeah, and the way, Terry, you always speak soul to soul is so valuable and so rare in this world out here. And you're such a great motivator. So thanks for being with us all the time. Thanks for supporting the campaign. Uh, it's really meaningful, and we are so grateful to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.